What's up, creative people? Welcome to the podcast. My name is Ryan Leacock. This is the podcast for people who enjoy honest and true experiences. Today, I'm chatting with Elaine Decleir, the other KW famous herself. Earlier in the summer, maybe spring, whatever, I spoke with local graphic designer Robin Lindner. And today I'm talking with her business partner, Elaine, the two halves of Robin and Elaine. Elaine is on the marketing side of the company, and it's interesting to get her take on that other side of things. You know, we dig into her perspective on creativity from a less visual point of view. One of the things that was interesting about my talk with Elaine was right in line with that. Creativity that is not always necessarily visual, like drawing. It can be overlooked because it's not always understood as creativity when we're younger by ourselves or by the people around us. So I think that type of creativity often lies dormant for a long time. And that was kind of Elaine's point of view and experience. So it's a great chat. You're going to really like it. I really enjoyed talking with Elaine. How's everyone doing? Good? I am glad to be back podcasting, sharing the good news of creativity. Over the summer, I finished the Creative People Podcast studio, so we're all set up. I've always believed in doing what you can with what you have. So when I started the podcast, I had a Yeti mic, and I was in my bedroom, and then I got this place, and I've been, building myself up. So I'm glad to be a little more professional now and be able to start proper in-studio interviews this week. I'm really looking forward to that. I'm a little bit nervous about that, but if you didn't do the things you were nervous about, you would just do boring shit. So I'm also looking forward to having a mix of Zoom and in studio. I've really grown fond of the Zoom phone call. I learned how to do it pretty well, and I'm liking connecting with creatives all over the world. The next two episodes of the podcast actually are creative people from the UK and from Spain. So I honestly don't know enough about geography. Is Spain in the UK? I feel like it is, and people are like rolling their eyes. I'm sorry. This is a podcast about creativity, not geography. Oh, I also wanted to mention that the podcast is actually on YouTube now. It's the same podcast, but with video. There's some audio versions on there of the previous ones, but going forward, there'll be a video companion for pretty much everyone, I think. I will put a link in the episode description. And that is enough bumper talk. Let's dive right into it with Elaine Decleir.
Yeah.
Hi, Elaine. How are you doing?
I'm great.
That's good. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I'm going to have to meet you in person.
We have to meet everybody in person.
I know. I've been kind of like going through a checklist of people.
Yeah.
How's your day?
It's good.
Yeah.
It's really hot outside.
It's
Have
so
you been?
hot. Yeah. I like in and then like hide inside. Are you a fan of the heat?
I'm a fan of heat typically, but not
Okay.
this hot, I would
Yeah.
say. Yeah.
Yeah.
You?
No, not really.
I feel like you're like a 17-degree weather kind of guy.
Oh my God.
What's your weather now?
Yeah, like 17 degrees.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
like,
my sister.
yeah. Me and your sister are good people.
Yours are the same. Yeah. I saw you and I was like, yeah, you like 17-degree
17-degree weather. I love it. I feel like so seen, but also so pigeonholed right now.
No, I mean, there's a range.
Okay, thank you. What's your temperature?
I think 25,
Nice.
28.
Oh,
That would be my
That's
range.
28 though, that's like top.
Yeah, I mean, typically you want to be by a body of water,
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah.
That's really helpful. I have a kiddie pool now. So it just for me, like as an adult.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy that.
I should go in my kids' kiddie pool.
Yeah.
When
Yeah,
I
it's
bought it, I
different when
thought
you
I
have-
was going to, but I didn't.
It's better when you have kids and a kiddie pool. Where are you? This is a sound.
This is my
Pool?
studio. Down, I'm in the him and her part of 305
305.
King Street. Yeah.
Nice. So we could hang
Yeah.
out all the time because usually we're at the Kitchener. I'm at my house today, but usually we're at the Kitchener Market.
Yeah. And I hear that you guys go by the underground. What's that place down there?
Underground Flavor Group.
Yeah.
Such a great spot. I think I have to go. I'm meeting with them either this afternoon or tomorrow or Friday, maybe. I don't know.
Well, there you go.
I love them.
I always like look at the people when I go down there because one, I miss seeing people, and two, I'm like looking for people. I'm like, do I know them from the podcast?
You do.
Yeah, probably. I usually do.
Should interview one of the chefs there, I feel like.
Yeah, that'd be great.
That would be really interesting.
Yeah, I kind of wonder what their whole deal is, to be honest. I have no idea what their whole deal is.
At the Underground Flavor Group, you should interview
Yeah.
Arnold because he has like such a vision that's so different from anything else that I've seen or heard from a restaurant.
Yeah.
That would be really interesting.
Oh, that would be cool. I will write down Arnold. I love it.
Yeah.
I'll check it out. I'll wander in there.
Yes.
Nice.
Do it.
Elaine, we're rolling. We're not even like we're pros. We don't even
What
need
do you mean we're
introductions.
rolling?
We're in the conversation. We just met each other. We're vibing. It's good. We don't even.
It's really awkward if you go onto a Zoom call and you don't just jump into the conversation.
Is that what you've learned?
Don't you think?
I don't know. I've had a lot of awkward Zoom calls in the last year.
Silence is so acceptable in person and actually like wanted sometimes. I feel like you don't appreciate silence as much. And when you hop on a Zoom call and it's silent, it's really problematic.
Let's try it.
Awkward. Okay.
So comforting.
It's not silent if you. So the thing is I know that when you are a speaker at an event, and then you ask, are there any questions? You then, as the speaker, you count to 5, and those are the longest 5 seconds. And then at 4 seconds, still nobody. 5 seconds, one person will raise their hand. That first person, then after that, more people will have questions, but nobody wants to be the first.
No, you got to get them over that little hump.
Yeah. But those 5 seconds are just like, what I do is I just really focus on counting. Maybe sometimes I should try other languages. I don't know, because I think that 5 seconds of silence is really awkward.
Well, I think we had our 5 seconds and we're over the hump now. Let's just dive into it.
Sounds good.
Okay, Elaine, I'm going to have you introduce yourself. You can, before we get into it, do you have any questions for me? Anything I should know?
Any questions for you? So like a secret password that we can tell people. I always want to play games with people.
Secret.
And then I was thinking like if someone's listening, like the first 5 people could get a KW Famous sticker if they send the secret password.
Wow. You are a true marketer. Like,
you know what I mean? Like, I just I'm always like curious and just want to know and engage with people.
Well, I think the secret password could be 5 seconds of silence. That could be. I like it.
Yeah.
Well, you're the one with the idea, so you tell me. You're kind of like.
Well, I was just wondering if that's like an okay thing to do.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
I think what's great about the podcast for me, and I'm feeling like the freedom of it, is like it's a creative people podcast. Really, if someone comes and like, oh, I don't know, it's a bit like all over the place, I'd be like, fuck you. You saw the title.
Yeah, I understand. Okay. Well, I think we should decide what the password is like later on based off of conversation. Okay. You know what I mean? Like sometimes there's like recurring themes. I've been listening to your podcasts actually, just like
I heard
ever since you talked to Robin, and then I just got really into it.
Thank you. Well, I was talking to Taylor down the hall. He's in here too. And he said that you reached out because you're listening to his podcast. And I was so like, that's like the whole thing. I'm like, yes.
It's so interesting because these people, or like they are in, or if I don't know them, like I listened to Andrew Kolb's content and I've met him before, but I haven't really talked to him too much. Yeah. And I was just like, it's interesting because it's either attainable to then talk to someone because they're in our community and usually very friendly. But like Taylor Jones, I know, like we partied together like over the years. I've seen him many times, but like I got insight into his mind and the way that he works and the way that he thinks. And I just think it's really cool what you're doing, like getting these conversations out of people.
I'm like completely on the flip side. One day I am going to party with Taylor Jones and I'm really looking forward to it, but I haven't yet, but I did have that deep conversation. So, just coming at it. I'm just finding my back door into having friends just through this.
Okay. Well, all of us together.
Okay, good. Yeah. I think that's how we have to do it.
Sounds good. And no, I don't have any further questions.
No, good. Okay. Elaine, introduce yourself. Tell us what you do. And then let's just dive in.
My name is Elaine Decleir, and I am a marketer. That's really it.
Yeah. So when I was talking to Robin, she said that you were in the park and you were like, I'm going to start a social media thing for this swan. That's just what came to mind right now. Let's start there. What's that impulse?
It's interesting what people take away from, I think we do this all the time with marketing. It's like you say something and then someone else delivers the message, and then what did the end person take away from it? Because I feel like it sounds like I was having I don't know. I mean, I was going through a time of boredom and creativity. I had just started freelancing, so I didn't have a lot of projects.
Okay.
And I was living near Victoria Park, and I just kind of went for a walk. And something that I love, and that's really hard to do, is when people of all ages really love something. And I think an animal is kind of that thing. So I'd go to the park, and then, an older couple would be sitting on the bench talking about Otis. And then a child would be running around trying to chase Otis, or whatever it is that kids do. And I just thought, wow, this is really interesting. It's really fun to see so many people know the name of this animal, and I hadn't.
Yeah.
And then I kind of did a Google search, and the Record had an article years ago that started, Otis is a bachelor and he's happy to stay that way. And just being a fan of the show, The Bachelor, I just really took that and thought it was funny. And I thought he's and then I kind of came up with a personality for him. And because I was bored, I had just been laid off my startup job, just started freelancing kind of casual. This was before we really started Robin and Elaine and KW Famous. And I was just kind of I'm used to having an audience. I'm used to talking to people online. That's what I do as a marketer. Yeah. So I just kind of decided that I was going to create an Instagram account for this one. I remember, I think I went to Robin's that night, and a couple people were there, and I was like, you guys, I did something really weird today. I started an account for the swan that lives in Victoria. It just kind of kept going. I don't have as much time these days to update the account as I did back when I had 1 to 2 clients.
Yeah.
It was just kind of a fun outlet for me that spurred into, and then Robin as a designer kind of picked it up and was like, I'm actually wearing the shirt right now, and was he needs a band t-shirt. And then we started selling them online, and I think she told that story, but it was just kind of an organic way for us to also start working together on something really fun.
Yeah, that is so fun. And I love that you're just there. There's a few things that I loved about that. I love that you're looking for things that lots of people like. I love those things. That's what I love about pop culture. And animals are totally like that. I love that. And I love that you're just, then you said bachelor, and my mind went to a suave gentleman, but then you said The Bachelor show, totally changed my view. Is this one still alive? When's the last time you updated for?
Yesterday,
Otis?
I did update the account.
Yes.
Good. But most of the time at this point, it's a lot of just other people creating content for Otis, and they're at the park and they tag him.
I love it.
I think also something that I'm always looking for is when we do an event or do a marketing campaign, I'm just looking for sort of a sense of belonging within people, and just how can we find our place in this world? And I feel for Otis, he's just there, he's a swan, and everybody just kind of loves him. So
yeah,
I just thought it was really cool.
Everything we've talked about so far isn't really the first thing that comes to mind when most people think about marketing. I think they think, I don't know what they think, but I think they think stuffy and corporate and, that kind of thing. Do you deal with any of that? Do you have to push back against any of that?
I think that one of the reasons why I do what I do is because there's a lot of mixed messages when it comes to marketing, or people are trying to force a message onto someone. I'm actually a really big believer in opting out, where if you have a really good brand, not only are people going to be invited and want to know that this is a product that you have, but the people who aren't right for your brand are going to self-identify that they aren't part of that and opt out, and you'll have better brand experience overall because the right people are coming to you. And I think that I'm a really bad liar, actually. So some people think marketers are really good liars. I'm really bad at it. So I just want to give people honest and true experiences. And I think that's where a lot of that sort of comes from.
I like what you said about being a bad liar. It's like, I think some of us have like that thing. It's like, but if I don't believe in this, it's hard to say it, you know?
Exactly.
Even if it sounds good or if it fits the narrative, it's like, but I don't believe it. Like it's a bit of a wall.
Yeah. And I think that people can see right through that.
Yeah.
Ultimately. And that I think we talk a lot about the next 20 years and what you want to do. And I think that's like a big question for people. Like, why did you start off our meeting by asking me what I want to do for the next 20 years of my brand? And it's because it shows so much more than just the here and now. And that's just a really important thing to me.
Yeah, I like that. So let's go back a little bit. Elaine, as a creative person, when did this kick off for you? Some people, when they're younger, they know right off the bat, and then other people, it's not until they're older. What was your story?
I think that I grew up dancing. That was like my creative outlet. So very different. But at the same time, I was doing ballet. So ballet is very structured. It's different sort of than other types of dance. As a marketer, and sometimes as a technical marketer, I don't know that I always thought about what I do as creative. Like I look at what Steph Utari does and the way that she talks about her work. And I look at the way Robin is, and I get to work with her every day. And I'm just like, they are so beyond creative. But I think only like in the last couple of years, I've come to realize what creativity means to me. And coming up with stories, essentially, and oftentimes just in a couple words is where most of my creativity will lie. If I have a creative idea, it's because I came up with a phrase that spurs off everything else. So I would really say that it's just in the past couple of years that I would think of myself as creative.
Interesting.
Even though I know that I've been creative now my entire life.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think when you were younger, you didn't necessarily identify like, oh, I'm a creative person?
I think it's more like an admiration for other people, and that I was just really bad at drawing. And I thought that if you were creative, you must be good at drawing. So yeah, it's just so different. What about you? When would you say that you realized you're creative?
The drawing thing is so funny because I think it's pretty common. If someone decided, like, someone said, if you can't draw, you're not creative to someone, and it just spread, you know? And
exactly.
And so many people believe this lie that it's like, we need to stop this. This is not true.
And I remember even in like English classes, like writing, I really enjoyed writing, but I feel like in English classes, it's even harder to get an A. Like most people, and when they write an essay, I felt like just didn't get an A. It was much harder to get a good mark in it. So it was my schooling that really like stopped me from thinking that, because it's easy to do well in math, and I did well in math, that I must be more of like a math person than a creative person.
I didn't do well in math, and I didn't do well in like writing because I was just like really irresponsible. So I knew I was creative, but I was like, well, fuck, I don't know how I'm going to do this though. So that's been the whole trajectory from, I'm still on it. Yeah. But I think it's so interesting, the things that we just shut off so early that we have to like kind of turn back on later on. Like I'm not speaking for you, but I think a lot of us, we're good at math or we're good at this, and we're like, oh, I guess this is not for me. I guess this is not for me. Then you get older and you're like, why did I decide this wasn't for me? I love this. This is like the thing that gets me up in the morning.
Yeah, definitely. Something I really like to say is that you'll always keep growing up, or you'll always be deciding what you want to be when you grow up, because I didn't think that I don't feel like a grown up now.
Yeah.
All of those things, but you always have to be thinking about what you want to do when you grow up. And it's just Lego blocks building on top of each other to the next thing. And you don't necessarily know what that is.
It's interesting that you say that, because like the growing up thing, it's like, what were you asking people before when you were talking with them, like, what do you want to do in 20, like, where are you in 20 years? That's kind of growing up, right? That's the same question.
That's true. And I think that when we tell people, we ask people that, we don't expect them to stick to it.
Yeah.
We just want to know kind of an idea, so that, you know, if it's the name of your company, that it didn't pigeonhole you, and that maybe you'll change it later. It's a little bit harder. So what are the things that we can do now to think about those? But I fully expect that when they're grown up, those answers will change. My 20-year plan ends with a beach and a palm tree. So
as all 20-year plans should.
Unless you like 17-degree weather, then maybe it's the mountains.
I'll visit a beach though. After 20 years, I'm like, fuck, I don't want to climb. That's the most relaxing spot. That's where I want to be in 20 years.
Yeah.
On a cool day though.
On a cool day, the wind blowing through your hair at the beach.
Yeah. These locks. So let's talk about your spark of inspiration then. You talked about it being like a couple words that kind of like you unpack from there. How does that process work for you? How do you get to those couple words?
It's funny because we had a week off, which we never do unless it's the holidays or something. First time taking summer vacation. But people always tell us that we work too much in our business, not on our business. And I think during that week, both Robin and I were like coming up with all of these ideas that we just never really kept thinking about before. And for me, I think it's more like word vomit. Like both times I had two things that I think we're going to execute on. And both of them had to do with being on a patio, drinking a beer. And then all of a sudden an idea comes and I just say it out loud. But I feel it coming up and then it's just word vomit. That's disgusting, but also
no, I'm so glad it went to like that different level, because you said word vomit. I was like, oh, my brain was like, okay, she just spits out a lot of words. I get it. And she picks the good ones. But then you're like, no, I feel it coming up. And I'm like, oh, I know that feeling. Everyone knows that feeling.
Yeah, it's not just
here it comes.
All of a sudden it happens. It's like, this is going to happen.
Yeah. And
then give me a moment. We're going to have our 5 seconds of silence for sure. And then it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes I like picture the words in my head first.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I say them, because I remember one of the phrases, which I feel like I shouldn't say it unless we actually continue to execute on it. But I saw it and then I was like really struggling to say it out loud. I would have, if I had paper in front of me, I would have written it down first, but I couldn't do that. And then I couldn't read off my paper. It's so detailed. I'm so sorry.
No, but like, take a step back from what you just said. And it is detailed in the sense that I think all of us have been there with an idea. You know, we've all been there where you're like getting it from the mess inside to like the real world and then starting to like sort it out. It's like the whole game, right? Like I totally know what you mean. Like, I wish I could have written it down. I didn't want to say it, because sometimes they're like that. You know, I love that.
Or sometimes you just want to sit with it and reflect. If I was alone, I would have sat with it and reflected for a minute. But because we were on patios drinking, I didn't have that option.
Yeah. So what'd you do?
So I just said it.
Yeah. You just literally vomited it out.
I vomited words.
So what happens after that?
Then you decide if it's a good idea or a bad idea.
Yeah.
I feel like one thing that I'm really lucky is that I have Robin with me all the time. Our client yesterday asked us if we lived together, and I was like, oh, no. We just spent a lot of time together. We have each other to bounce ideas off of, and then we just kind of know this was a good idea.
Yeah.
And we're going to keep going with it. And then I think Robin, almost because we've been working together for 3 years now, I think she takes it next and she visualizes. I mean, sometimes she starts with the idea. So in this case, she kind of visualized what it was. And then we kind of go back and work on it back and forth.
It's nice to have that, like, on one hand, you didn't want to say it out loud, but on the other hand, you have that safe space where you can say those things out loud. And even if it's not fully developed or it's going to change or it's still like a safe space that someone else can like, add their magic.
Exactly. Yeah. And one of them was like an event idea. So we actually were doing a forced brainstorming session where we just kind of like both kind of saying things back and forth.
Yeah.
And so we had lots of ideas put out there. We were like, that's not right. That sounds fine. But what else is out there? And then you see that one and you both kind of cling to it. And that's how you know that you can move forward with it.
Yeah.
And then there's like the back pocket ideas where some of them just end up in the back pocket for years and years, but they eventually might find their place.
Yeah. That's so interesting. This morning, I was like working on this blog post that I'm calling Ideas Don't Have Timestamps, because sometimes they just show up and you're like, I know this is good, but I don't know what to do with it right now. I guess I just put it in my back pocket, but that can be pretty confusing, especially when you're still figuring out how your creativity comes, and like, you think everything's like, I got to use this now, but you might not use an idea for like years.
Yeah. Actually, we have one rule called the idea has to stand the test of time, where if you can't remember the idea tomorrow, it's probably not a good idea. But that's not true about like going to the grocery store. So sometimes I go back on that idea. I'm like, well, when you went to the grocery store and you had the idea that you're going to buy bread, and then you went to the grocery store and you forgot.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little bit different, but I'm just saying that sometimes writing them down, having them somewhere is a good idea.
I agree. Robin said that on the podcast, and I agreed, but then I found myself disagreeing a lot too. But there are times where I fully agree, and I agree with like the heart behind it is like, if it's really good, it's going to stick around.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. That was one of my main takeaways from my chat with her. Let's talk about partnership though. Like, it sounds like awesome. Like, it can't be always awesome.
It's funny because I know that Robin was going to be on the podcast, and then I listened to the podcast and I was like, oh, you talked about me a lot.
Yeah.
And I know that we both do in our lives, because sometimes we're thinking on behalf of one another, and we are so intertwined in each other's lives that it's hard. It's hard sometimes. It's really, really hard to have a business partner. And I think sometimes people look at it and they're like, oh, you guys, you're always hanging out and then you're brainstorming ideas. And yeah, it's amazing. Like, I feel like so lucky to go to work with my best friend every day, but it's also one of the most important relationships that I have. And we have to be honest with each other, and we have to fight things out. And then when we're in a fight, it's just like so much anxiety. And then we have to meet with the client, but we're disappointed in something that happened. Yeah. So I think the first year was really kind of nice. And then it was also kind of hard. But then last year was really hard, especially dealing with the pandemic. I think just getting to know each other's working styles, and then not being too hard on each other, and then living through a pandemic and all of those things. And then this year has been a little bit easier, but who knows, maybe it'll get really hard again. Yeah.
I think it's like, you have to have grace for the other person, especially during like what we are currently in. Is like, I think we don't even understand necessarily how we deal with it, and then you're in a partnership with someone and they're like, what are you doing? And like, it just gets messy.
It's funny because I think that we give each other more grace. Or even this morning, I was just like, I'm not having it today. It's really annoying. And she goes, do you need to take today off? Like, that's totally okay. We work for ourselves. There's no pressing deadline in this moment. Do you just, and it's like, well, no, I'm fine. I'm just overreacting. And I do want to get this done. And I'm really excited about whatever it is that we're working on. So she reminds me to give myself grace.
Yeah.
Whereas I would probably be a lot harder on myself if I was just speaking with myself. So there's a lot of pros, and then there's the really hard parts. But for us, I think she's just so genuine and honest and creative that she makes my work better. And I'm really thankful for that.
I love it. You said there about like, no, I'm fine. It's like you needed an out, and then also you needed someone to take it seriously. I feel like I'm there all the time. Like, okay, I'm being dramatic right now, but I'm actually fine, but I need you to take this seriously. And now the cycle's over. Let's move on.
Exactly. And sometimes just talking things out, even when a project is going badly,
Yeah.
and to have someone to be like, I'm going to step in now and talk to the client, because Robin's a designer and I'm a marketer. So we do different things. And sometimes the projects rely more heavily on one of us. And so it's just really nice at the end of the day that if I'm struggling with a client, she can just step in and be like, this is what's going to happen. This is my outlook on what's going on, and take control if I can't.
Yeah. And I like that you can, like, having those two close but different perspectives is like super valuable for attacking any problem, right? It's like, I know as a designer who has to like figure in the dark of marketing, sometimes you just like, you hit it with design, and then you just like, I don't know what to do here.
Right.
You know, to be able to have someone that you can talk with and like pivot to and look at it from a completely different perspective, that's huge.
Yeah, I feel like listening to your podcast and listening to so many people, everyone had like that kind of one person that they talked to, whether it was their partner, whether it's a coworker, like someone always had someone that they talked to, and that outlook is just so valuable. And that's even what we feel like we come in to work on brands. We'll be like, we're the new person in the room. We don't really hold back when we answer questions or ask them even. That we're gonna act as the customer that doesn't know anything, and that's really valuable.
Yeah, because we can be so in our heads that we're making things for other people, but we have to make them inside, and we can lose the plot a little sometimes.
For sure, yeah, and it's also like, even when we look out into the world, I feel like Robin and I look at two different things. If we're staring at the same waterfall, she might be looking at the structure of the waterfall, the colors, and I'll be like, I heard there was a cliff that we could jump off here. I wonder how deep it is. And I'll just be thinking of something completely different. And it's just cool to work with someone who thinks, just even to this day, we don't know what each other is thinking.
Yeah. But bring me back to when this partnership started evolving. How did you, had you been in a creative partnership before? How did you know, let's do this together?
I had been laid off a startup job. I was kind of just looking for another job. So I just realized that I didn't have to go back to work. And then I was freelancing for some jobs. And then Robin was doing the same thing. She was working full-time and freelancing. And the first thing we actually worked on together was an event. It was a dance-related event. There's not a lot of cool dance. There actually are starting to be more, but cool dance events in KW. So we brought in an instructor, and Robin designed it, and I organized everything. And it just kind of like worked really well.
Yeah.
And then we heard about some project, and we just kind of like tried it out. So it's two freelancers working together. And then when we realized, Robin actually texted me one day, do you want to start a business together? And I think I responded like, this is a lot bigger of a conversation than this, but yes. And so we just put our names together. And then from that point on, we could offer so much more than just being individual freelancers on our own. We are now what people look at as an agency, and that a lot of our values really aligned on what we want brands to be. It was really organic.
Yeah, I really like that. Did you have any doubts though? Was it like, or was it just like, I think this is a perfect fit?
I think that both of us were just willing to see where it goes.
Yeah.
And that over time, more so, I definitely believed in us. But over time, we realized how different our skills are. And that I know that some other people start businesses together and they argue over who should do what. And for us, it just seems to be very clear what the boundaries are, and then how we respect and talk to each other.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever had any doubts in our business, even during the hard times.
Is there anything that you would suggest to someone who's like thinking about a partnership that you've discovered is like super important? Like, look for this, make sure that this is kind of there.
I think that my relationship with Robin is just so different. I feel like you have to be ready for it. It's really hard. You're going to find out a lot about someone else. But I think looking for different qualities that you both have to bring to the table is probably where I see other partners also really work out. You're not looking for the same person as you that you can, I mean, hopefully at the end of the day, you can still grab patio drinks together and have fun. But I think you're looking for someone who complements your skills entirely.
And like probably like way of working, and like there has to be some sort of clicking together where you can, if someone's super structured and someone's like not structured at all, like there has to be something like that fits together, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think depending on the relationship, you can probably figure it out. And if that's the case, then one person needs to have a lot of patience. But patience in partnership is pretty key. Patience in business as well. Yeah.
Partnerships are so fascinating to me because I'm not like, I've been married for a long time, so that's a partnership, obviously. But like a business partnership, I'm just fucking making this up as I go along. So it sounds like it sounds so nice, but also it sounds like the scary stuff of sharing that much of yourself with another person. That sounds like, I don't know if I'm up for doing that again, like, so I think I'm a very, very, the reason I want to talk to both of you is because I'm so intrigued by how you guys work together, and it just seems so, I just want to like be part of it for 2 hours. That's it.
It's Robin, Elaine, and Ryan now. That's our business now. I just feel like you have to, I feel like it's really hard, and I don't want people to get the idea. And I think people get a lot of an idea that it's not that hard.
Okay.
And I think you just said that you are trying to figure it out as you go. And I think that us too, but we have each other to figure it out as we go. And if someone isn't willing to take those risks and just like throw a party, even though it feels like it's off brand, but it's not, because your brand is Kate Famous and it's supposed to be at the end of the day that everyone has fun, that we're just so aligned in why we do what we do.
Yeah.
And I think that we always push our clients to tell us why they do what they do. And that's been the base of our business and how we help other people build their brands.
And it comes back to like that honesty thing. You're not asking anyone you're working with to do anything that you're not doing. You're like, I'm doing this. This is like, come do this with us.
Yeah. I think we're really lucky in the sense that this community is so supportive of each other, and they look at maybe Kate Famous and just think they want to work with people who also love the community. And without that community element, and we try and bring the community element in everything that we do, whether we're working on our brand or somebody else's, because it's just so important to us.
Why is this community so important to you? Are you from here? Like, have you been here your whole life?
Yes, I grew up here. I went to Western and I thought that I would never come back. Western was close enough that I could come back home, but I didn't want to stay here. And then I got a job working for an agency in town when I graduated, and I just stayed because it was really hard to get a job at the time. And then I was really interested in just the startup world and what startups were doing. So I went to some of those. I think that I love living in Kitchener-Waterloo, and there's so many really awesome people, and you know that, you talk to them all the time, that are really supportive of one another. And I just feel like any idea that I have, when I'm ready to push it forward, other people are willing to help. And I feel like if I were to move to Toronto, it would be a little bit harder to execute on some of my ideas. And I think that I'm also willing to help other people build their dreams. My favorite part of our jobs is getting to talk to people who have an idea for their business, and it's not something that's easy to think of, and then to help other people do that is really amazing.
And I think partly it's like, this is like ours, like this is our city. And if you were like at Western or like in Toronto, you're kind of building that city, right?
Right.
But
yeah,
I don't know. I think some of us feel a responsibility.
A responsibility and an opportunity for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, good. That's the positive. So let's talk about ideas then, like, and how you interact with your creativity. It's interesting that you said those, it comes as words and stuff, but if you were to imagine your creativity in your mind and give it a physical form, what does that look like?
I thought it was funny because you talked about how yours was a cat in a podcast.
Not anymore, but it used to be.
What is it now?
It's a black hole.
It's a black hole.
Yeah.
The first
good and bad, like good. Yeah. Sorry. It was a cat though.
Yes. The first thing that came to my mind was an arcade claw machine. You know those claw machines, and you're reaching for that plushie and you really want it.
Yeah.
But most people, they don't ever get the prize. It feels like gambling. It just feels like stealing. They're taking our money from us.
Yeah.
But every now and then somebody gets the toy.
Yeah. That
little cute little bear or whatever you get. And it actually lands in the hole and goes into you, and you get it and you get to keep it.
I love that. Goes into you. Like, it's such a visual. It's like, drop. Now I have it.
Literally drops. But there's also that part of it where it's still moving towards you and you don't know if it's going to drop.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that sometimes we'll come up with an idea, and sometimes I feel like such a Debbie Downer, and I'll be like, no, that's not right. No, this is going to happen. No, because I'm trying to think through. And I think sometimes people in meetings, they think that I'm angry because I'm now thinking through every single logistic towards like the end. If it's an event, who's going to clean up at the end of it? Like I'm trying to plan out everything when I know that sometimes I don't need to go all the way there. But I feel like that part where the toy is coming towards you is like, is it going to drop? Have we figured out everything that we need to do? I think also in marketing, I heard a quote once that said, marketing is 99% logistics and 1% a good idea. You have that good idea, but how are you going to execute it? And what are you going to do next? And then how are you going to follow up at the end of the day? So I feel like when I have an idea, I'm like holding on to it, and then it might drop before it comes to me because of all of those factors, but it might land at the end of it.
Yeah. Oh, I really like that. And I love the people in meetings think you're angry, but they need to be tested. And there needs to be kind of like the bad cop there to be like, yeah, but what about this? What about this? What about this? It has to stand up to that test.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But I think that that's where Robin and I find a really good balance, because Robin I'll be able to say no, and then she'll all of a sudden think of something else, and then we'll kind of like come back and meet in the middle.
I think you bring up an interesting thing about negativity. It's complicated being negative, because life's negative a lot of the time. Like, just, it's hard out there. But we want to stay positive, but the negative viewpoint can weed out a lot of problems. It's valuable. You just can't live there all the time.
It's true. I think it's more about, for me at the end of the day, I think I said at the beginning that it's about finding a sense of belonging within people, and that at the end of the day, I just want to have fun most of the time, depending obviously on the project that I'm working on. But I don't look at it like a negative outlook. I look at it as, what are we going to do? What is the best possible thing that we can do for people? And just also out of efficiency, what are the things that are standing out to me right now that we need to address before we continue to move forward, and just think around.
I think I hope you didn't misunderstand. It's not about being negative, because you're just willing to go through the negative stuff and you're going towards the positive. So it is a positive viewpoint. It's just like, hey, we just got to get through this shit first. And we're not going to ignore it.
Yeah.
Right.
It's true. And lots of times, like, I'm thinking, if it's an event, again, I'm thinking through the entire script of what happens and the pre-planning to the end. And I just kind of go into a tunnel, I would say. And I just kind of think through every single thing that's going to happen that I can think of in that time.
Yeah. We got to teach people like, hey, that's creative thinking. Like you can't draw, but like you just did that. That's creative thinking, that you're a creative person, right? Like I feel like we need to go to all those kids and be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Don't worry about the drawing. Can you try to do that?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like more and more, no, I still think that kids think that if you're not good at drawing, you're not creative. You're right.
I should ask my kids.
Yeah. What does creativity mean to you? Oh, you should do a podcast with your children.
Oh, that'd be good.
See, interesting.
I need to hire you.
I feel like
we'll just do another podcast, but I'll just save it for me. It'll just be like marketing questions. Oh man. When's the last thing that you saw that you were just like were blown away by?
I think in your email you said saw or read.
Yeah. I mean saw and like the using your eyes.
Oh yes.
Your mind's eye even. I don't care.
My mind's eye. I feel like because I was thinking about something, when it really blows you away, you tell a lot of people about it. Yeah. And the last thing that I told a lot of people about is this book that I'm reading called The Waterloo You Never Knew. Oh. And it's so interesting to read the history of a place that you grew up in, that you live in, and just hearing the names of like Jacob Bechtel and Albert McCormick, and not in the context of an arena, but in the context of who these people were and what it looked like in Waterloo County in the 1800s. Wow. And I think that I have told so many people that they need to read this book. And it also inspires me to share some of these things through the KW Famous.
Yeah. Deep dive KW Famous.
Yeah, I don't think it's a KW Famous for everyone. Like you would want to be interested in history. Yeah. But it's just a really good, I'm not actually done yet, but it's been a really good read.
Who wrote it?
It's by Joanna Rickert Hall.
Ooh, it's like a proper three name.
Yeah. Just the fascinating things about our region. And I saw like Vogel saying greens is the new, I don't know if people have taken a walk in downtown Kitchener. I've gone on some walks with people and they've been like, oh, I didn't know this was here. And this has popped up. And the pandemic has changed downtown Kitchener a lot. Yeah. And it's like Vogel saying was the first button manufacturer in Waterloo region. And just like the interesting stories that come from there. Yeah.
Oh, I really like it. I want to look into that. What's your favorite thing to make?
My favorite thing to make are people happy.
Oh, that's so nice.
And I love hosting events and I love making like an environment of many activities that I'm really interested in how memories are formed based off of place, and how if you play, badminton and then you go sit by the bonfire and then you eat food, you have formed memories in each of those three spaces, instead of if you go to a patio, you just remember being at the patio. Or if you get really drunk one night, you kind of still remember where you went, but you don't necessarily know what you did or said. And I love at the end of an event, when someone says thank you. I actually don't love that because I'm like, no, I invited you to my house and I just feel awkward because I feel like I didn't do anything because I wanted this also for me. But I also think that when people, all we have in this world goes deep, but all we have in this world is our time. And when people choose to spend time with you and then feel thankful for the time that they spent with you and that they've made and formed so many memories in that time. And I think over the pandemic, you think, well, I was in my house all the time and I blinked and all of a sudden now I'm 2 years older and I don't really remember anything that happened. Yeah. Except for that I was at home a lot. Then now we have more opportunities than ever to make those experiences happen.
I really love, I think I've never talked about creativity in exactly this way. You're talking about being creative with your time and being creative with location, right? Like in making things and making interesting things with both those elements. That seems, those are like primal elements, but they're not things, right? They're not, you can't capture them. They just are in that moment. And I think that's really an interesting place to play with creativity.
So I guess I changed my answer because I don't really want to be the girl that wants to make people happy. Like what I want to make are environments that people feel like they have a place where they belong. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I like it a lot. And like belong in that moment, not necessarily like belong forever. Because when you're talking about badminton and then, you know, fire, if you have a memory of each of those moments, I think something connected at those places, right?
For sure.
And so I think that's interesting.
There's a sense of connection. And then every time you move your body, every time you move to a new physical location, you have the opportunity to create new connections. Usually the same person isn't sitting beside you.
Yeah.
You feel like it's not something that you remember all of the different feelings that you had. And you have opportunity. If you're not having a good time playing badminton, for example, and you move on, it's easier to forget that you had a bad time because you now formed a connection with someone new. Yeah. So I remember, you know, you can sleep in a luxury hotel and be completely alone, or you can sleep in a hostel around a ton of people that you make connections, and you can both have a really good time in both of them, but you remember different things about them. Yeah. At the end of the day, I feel like I don't usually remember that I had a bad sleep. I remember the connections that I made.
What would you recommend, and like what would your advice be to someone who is creative more in the, how do I say this properly, like in the abstract, like your creativity, what we're talking about here? We're not talking about painting, we're talking about abstract creativity in times and places. And what would you recommend to someone who feels drawn to that?
I would recommend that they are just intentional about every single thing that they put on the table. And I think too, it's not just about, I think I talk a lot about experiences in a room together, but with marketing, to me, it's all the same. It's the before the campaign even happens. It's a huge myth that people have, that this is a time that you can build up a lot of hype and mystery towards that thing that you're about to launch. Then there's the launch. What happens then? I think I would just tell them to like allow their thoughts to exist. Just allow yourself to feel. I think it took me a long time, and I read a quote once that said, feelings are for feeling. And I just remember really leaning into that and being like, if you can think of a creative experience for people, make sure that you're intentional about everything you do, but you've also thought through the entire process. Because you can have, like I said before, I think it goes back to 1% good ideas, 99% logistics. Yeah.
I think that's so interesting too, is like, you just need one good idea. And I think if you're a creative person, you think, oh, but creative people have good ideas all the time and just like falling all over the floor, but you really just need one. And it doesn't matter if you have 5 good ideas or like one, you just need one. And then you use craft and skill to kind of make it what it's supposed to be. Talk to me about your craft and skill. How do you grow? How do you challenge yourself? How do you approach, getting better? How do you approach that?
I'm always looking to do, and I think Robin's the same way on a different end. We're always looking to do something different. And when you're doing something different, this is the same thing, forming memories, trying new things, having different experiences in your body and feeling different things and following them. Yeah. I think that the way I grow is by talking to different people. And again, the pandemic obviously made that difficult, but I really tried. Every month I have to talk to someone new. I'm going to approach this person and see. I still ran marketing meetups online just to see where I can talk to different people, listening to your own podcast, listening to any podcast that inspires creativity, following those feelings.
I literally just had something I was going to say. It just left. It must have been a terrible idea.
No, it wasn't. It was a great idea.
So good. It was good. Oh, yes, I remember what it was. Do you consider yourself like an introverted person or an extroverted person?
I am a huge extrovert.
Yeah.
And I have had to learn I get bored very easily if I'm not around other people. And I have lately been working on embracing boredom to find insight and meaning into my own life, which is really difficult when you want to be around other people, but happy to be around other people again. And then I just feel so inspired. And I feel like I've had so many fun, people said that you'll have a lot of creative ideas if you're alone inside your house. And that's when all of these ideas will come, innovative ideas during the pandemic, but definitely not for me. I feel like I've had more good ideas lately, being able to interact with people more.
Yeah. Do you think though that the time away helped when you went back?
Luckily, we were very busy with client work. I feel like I kind of went more on like my own personal project. Yeah, but I guess it is different. And maybe you're right. Maybe it was some time away that really helped.
I just wondered, sometimes we think of things like it's good for us, but if it's not in the moment good for us, then we just don't see the benefit. But, maybe that time away added to how you came back to being around people. I don't know. I don't around people that much, so.
We actually executed on an event during the pandemic. It was called the Amazing Race, or the KW Amazing Race. Mm-hmm. And I think when I talk about ideas and logistics, like logistically for that event, it was all done through text message, where people received a text and then they had to answer clues and then it had a physical interaction element where you walked around uptown and you had to answer questions and then text back on your phone. And I just thought text was so accessible to everyone. It didn't need to be downloading another app on our phones.
Yeah.
And we were able to interact with the physical world, even though it was a pandemic. The guide was your phone. And then you still had to go to the store locations. And I feel like logistically in that one was probably the hardest one that we've ever done.
Yeah.
Because there were so many spots, because we had to think about COVID and all of those things. So even though there was a pandemic, I feel like we were still trying to push the envelope on what we could do given the limitations we had.
Yeah, I love that. And what I love that I've seen from this whole thing is like people just finding a way to do the shit that they feel like they got to do, and like you guys, you feel like you got to make events and make these like experiences, and you're just like, we're going to figure out a way.
And I think that people are really adaptable. And I think there is a lot of negativity in the world, but ultimately people are looking for the positives in everything. Yeah. And that's just really nice and refreshing.
Yeah. Elaine, I had the best time chatting with you. I feel like it's just like, I was like waiting for this since my talk with Robin. Now it feels like the circle is complete.
I feel like Taylor Jones talked about this in like the form of therapy. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, this was therapy.
Oh, I'm glad.
Thank you so much. And thank you for everything that you do. I feel like I've been really enjoying listening to the podcast.
That means so much. It's the more I get into this, the more I'm like, I was just talking to someone yesterday down at Pyrus, and he was like an older guy, but he was talking about all his creative frustrations and like all the time he's felt like alone and all that. And I was like, yes, man, like we gotta talk about this. This is like, we haven't talked about it. And I'm just glad to be part of the conversation and to bring people together, because I just spent so much of my time frustrated. And I think a lot of people have, and we can all get stuck. So thank you for sharing everything and complimenting Robin's episode. I had the best time. Thank you.
Thank you. I can't wait to see you in person with Taylor Jones.
Just come down. We're here.
Sounds good.
Yesterday, I had someone come down and they changed their hair and were wearing a mask. I had no idea who they were.
Yesterday, I said hi to someone very excitedly. It wasn't the person I thought. And I was like, sorry, it's the mask.
I blamed it on their bangs. They got bangs. And so I was like, I have a problem with bangs.
Bangs, it's a completely different time. We have bangs, we have masks. How are you supposed to recognize anyone? Nobody's wearing skinny jeans anymore because they're out of style. Who knows?
Bangs and mask, and you could like walk in, you could like a new person,
which I kind of like sometimes, but it's really hard to go to the grocery store and not run into someone in KW. So
isn't it the mask thing though? Sometimes you're just like, I just want to get in and out and no one's going to see me. And this is the fucking awesomest.
Yeah, it's the awesomest.
You just want to, you just want to hide sometimes. So I don't know, maybe I'm just saying this as an introverted extrovert. I had the best time talking to you, but now I'm so drained. So
I could talk all day. All right. Have a great day, Ryan.
Have a great day, Elaine. Thank you for being on the podcast. Elaine's great, isn't she? I just loved her take on things. Marketing based on things that everyone likes and then having great experiences in interesting places. It's not necessarily what I thought about when I thought about marketing before. So, Elaine, thank you for stretching my perspective on marketing. Oh, and I really liked Elaine's perspective on always asking yourself what you're going to do when you grow up. It's such a simple way to keep your goals in front of you and to keep moving forward in life. So thank you, Elaine, for being on the podcast today. Thank you for balancing out the podcast with Robin, for humanizing marketing, and for teaching me a couple things. Also, thank you for seeing me for who I am right away, a guy who's most happy when it's 17 degrees outside. Secret password for today is 5 seconds of silence. The first listener to write in gets a KW Famous Tea and a Creative People Podcast tea as well. Alternative titles for this episode could be Bad at Drawing. If you're bad at drawing, it doesn't mean you're not creative. I'm going to write a blog post about that. Today's podcast was produced by me with music by Sarah the Instrumentalist. Special thanks to Aaron from Him and Her. Big thanks to Josh and Mixed Media Sound for cleaning up these sounds. Thank you to you for listening. If you like this episode or any other, share, tell a friend, subscribe, like. We're all in a battle against the evil algorithms. Help me out. Have a good week, friends. Show up, do the work. See ya.